This is the divorce paperwork. My new wife will take care of everything from now on." My husband, Christopher, handed me the papers with a smug smile, completely oblivious to the gravity of his words. The moment I saw his expression, I felt an icy chill spread through my chest. I took a deep breath, absorbing his words calmly, and responded with a smile. "Well then, good luck with 24-hour caregiving, nighttime bathroom trips, preparing every meal. It's all yours now. If your new wife can handle it all, I'm sure you'll be just fine." I didn't miss the brief flicker of doubt that crossed his face. That's right, he didn't understand. He had no idea how grueling it was going to be. "My name is Mia. I've been married to my husband Christopher for 25 years. Our 2 children are now adults, living independent lives. After they moved out, it was just him and me again, returning to a quiet life together. At first, there were no major problems. We enjoyed peaceful days, spending time together. I balanced my job and the household chores, keeping myself busy and fulfilled. On weekends, we'd go out together or meet up with friends, often enjoying social gatherings with other couples. I felt content with our marriage. If I had any complaints, they were so minor I hardly noticed them. But everything changed when my mother-in-law, Rebecca, suddenly collapsed. Rebecca, being elderly, had been slowly losing strength, something we were all vaguely aware of. Still, she had been managing her daily life without much assistance. Neither we or Rebecca herself could have imagined how drastically things were about to change. It happened one ordinary day. Rebecca suddenly collapsed in her living room. We rushed to call an ambulance, and at the hospital, she was diagnosed with a stroke. It left one side of her body paralyzed. From that moment on, our lives turned upside down. At first, Rebecca was determined to work through her rehabilitation, and I was committed to supporting her as much as I could. She couldn't do most things on her own anymore, so I had to step in to help her with nearly everything. Rebecca, always so considerate, would apologize often. "I'm sorry for the trouble, and thank you so much," she'd say with a look of deep gratitude. Seeing her in that state only strengthened my resolve. After all, she had been such a tremendous help to me, especially when my children were young. "Rebecca, how was therapy today?" "It didn't go well. My right hand just wouldn't move at all." "I'm so sorry, Mia. I hate that I've become like this. I really am sorry." "Please don't say that. You're working hard to get better, and that's what matters. Let's take it slow and keep going. Don't push yourself too hard, it's okay." At first, she would smile and say, "I'll do my best." But as time went on, her expressions darkened, and her enthusiasm for therapy waned. Her frustration with her immobility and the guilt of being a burden began to show in her words. "Do I even deserve to be alive anymore? I'm just causing trouble for everyone." "That's not true, Rebecca. I'm happy to be here with you. Let's keep working together." And I truly meant it. It was painful to see her struggling and fighting this illness, but supporting her felt like an important role for me. However, the reality was much harsher than I had imagined. On top of caring for Rebecca, I had to handle all the household chores and prepare every meal by myself. The hardest part was the constant vigilance helping her to the bathroom at night, adjusting her sleeping position, always being on alert for her needs. Even though I had resolved to support Rebecca, I felt my spirit beginning to break. "Rebecca, please don't hesitate to call me if you need anything. I'll always help you." "I'm so sorry, Mia. I hate putting you through this again and again. I just feel so useless." Every time she said that, it broke my heart. But even I had limits. From morning until night, I never had a moment to rest. Gradually, I felt both physically and mentally exhausted. At work, I struggled to stay awake, constantly worrying about how to manage this overwhelming situation. Meanwhile, Christopher started coming home late more often. "Christopher, you've been getting home late lately. I know work is probably hectic, but can you spare a little thought for Rebecca?" I know, but the project at work is really demanding right now. I'm able to focus on it because you're doing such a great job taking care of her. I trust you with it." His words made my frustration boil over. He had no idea how tired I was or how much effort I was putting into caregiving and running the household. I was working too. Feeling isolated, I continued to take care of Rebecca every day. "If only I were stronger, you wouldn't have to bear this burden. I'm so sorry. Please don't say that. You've done so much for me over the years. Let me repay you now." I said it, but I couldn't deny the growing toll on my body. Yet, I felt there was no one I could rely on. I believed it was my responsibility to care for Rebecca. But wasn't it Christopher's responsibility too, as her son? So I tried asking him again. "Christopher, could you help out a little? I'm really tired. I already told you I'm swamped with work. I can't right now. Just give it a bit longer, and things will settle down." But that bit longer never seemed to arrive. I continued handling everything alone. His late hours meant I couldn't work overtime myself. At work, I began to feel increasingly out of place. But even on weekends, he was rarely at home anymore. An invisible rift began to grow between us, and our conversations became fewer and fewer. One day, I prepared dinner for Christopher and waited for him to come home. When he finally arrived, he looked at the food on the table and said, "I don't want it. I already ate." Then he walked straight to the bedroom. "What? Why? I went through the trouble of making this. You usually let me know ahead of time. It's too much of a hassle to call every time. You should just figure it out. It's the same thing every day." His cold response left me speechless. In the past, we wouldn't have argued over something so trivial. I tried to convince myself that Christopher must be exhausted, but deep down, I felt something inside me breaking. At night, I often woke up unable to sleep, and I found myself staring at his face as he slept. When did we become so distant? That thought lingered in my mind, but no answers came. Feeling the icy chill of our strained relationship, I continued my days consumed by Rebecca's caregiving. Christopher remained indifferent, showing no signs of concern for me at all. Then one day, something shook me deeply. While lying on the couch, trying to relax, I absent-mindedly scrolled through social media. By chance, I stumbled upon Christopher's account. I hesitated, feeling like I shouldn't look, but curiosity got the better of me. Lately, his behavior had been weighing on my mind. His account was filled with posts about work and daily life, but what caught my attention was the comment section. There, among the usual replies, stood out frequent comments from someone named Emily. Christopher's responses to her were unusually friendly, almost intimate. They talked about lunches and dinners, and their words made it clear that they enjoyed spending time together. "Yesterday's lunch was so much fun. Where should we go next? Maybe that new restaurant everyone's talking about. What do you think?" Reading their exchanges sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just lunch. His frequent late nights, combined with this cozy back and forth, left no doubt in my mind. This Emily, whoever she was, clearly had a special relationship with Christopher. From their comments, I learned she worked as an office assistant at the same company as his. A heavy sense of unease settled in my chest as I kept rereading their interactions, asking myself over and over, could it really be true? But as I reflected on my own exhaustion, both physically and mentally, from taking care of Rebecca, the evidence before me was undeniable. He's having an affair. I whispered the words to myself, and the realization of it hit me hard. While I was pouring all my energy into taking care of Rebecca, Christopher was betraying me. I couldn't believe it. At the same time, I couldn't stop questioning how things had come to this. I couldn't carry this doubt on my own. Living every day with suspicion gnawing at me was impossible. I had to find out the truth. One evening, Christopher said he was going out for a company dinner. That was when I made the decision to follow him. I drove to his office and parked nearby, wrestling with the anxiety in my chest as I waited. After a while, Christopher emerged from the building. Walking beside him was a young woman I didn't recognize. She had to be Emily. The two of them strolled through the night, talking intimately. I followed them discreetly, watching to see where they would go. Eventually, they arrived at an upscale restaurant. I watched from a distance as they entered the building. Inside, Emily smiled brightly at Christopher, and he returned her smile just as warmly. Every time she laughed, Christopher's face lit up with the same joy. Seeing them like this, my heart completely shattered. It's confirmed. I couldn't watch anymore. Fighting back tears, I returned to my car and drove home. It was clear I couldn't take this any longer. The next day, I resolved to confront Christopher. When he got home, I calmly spoke to him in the living room. "Christopher, you've been coming home late a lot recently. Is there something going on? I've told you 100 times it's work. Stop being so pushy." Christopher's cold response showed that he thought I hadn't figured anything out. "Is that all? I saw you having dinner with someone named Emily. How do you know about Emily?" He shot back, startled. "Oh, so there is something between you two." Christopher's face flickered with surprise but quickly returned to a faint calm. "I don't know what you think you saw, but so what? Has she done anything to you?" "No, right. So just stay out of it. This has nothing to do with you." His words cut me like a knife. All this time, I had been pouring my heart into caregiving and trusting him, but my feelings clearly meant nothing to him, nothing to do with me. "We've been together for 25 years. How can you say that? We're married, Christopher." My voice trembled with emotion. Christopher let out a deep sigh, his tone flat and emotionless. "Fine, I'll be honest. I'm done. I'm tired of this life with you. Let's end it. I want to be with someone younger, someone full of energy." His words froze me in place. More than the affair itself, it was the realization that Christopher's heart had completely left me that shattered me. "Are you serious? You're tired? Do you even understand how much I've been through?" He just stared at me silently. The moment I saw that cold gaze, I felt something inside me shatter. Already exhausted from taking care of Rebecca, I never imagined Christopher would betray me and demand a divorce on top of it. I stood there, frozen in place. And then, all the emotions I had been holding back burst forth like a dam breaking. "Wait a minute. Do you even realize how hard I've been working all this time?" I poured out all the frustrations about Rebecca's caregiving that I had kept bottled up. Every single day, from morning until night, I cared for Rebecca without a moment's rest. On the days when Rebecca's condition worsened, I woke up multiple times at night to help her to the bathroom, sometimes so overwhelmed that I couldn't even manage to prepare meals properly. Yet, with no one to help me, I kept pushing myself to the limit, only to face his indifference now, as though everything I had done meant nothing. "You always claimed to be too busy with work and dumped all the responsibility for the house and Rebecca onto me. And now you're having fun with someone else. What do you think will happen to Rebecca if I'm not here? When I confronted him, he sighed heavily, his face clouded with irritation. She'll figure it out. You're just blowing things way out of proportion. Hearing those words, a deep rage surged from within me. Figure it out? Fine, then you try it. Do you think Emily can handle caregiving? 24-hour bathroom assistance, meal preparation, waking up at night over and over. Do you even understand what's involved? When I raised my voice, Christopher sneered. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. Emily's younger and has more energy than you. It's not as bad as you make it out to be. His irresponsible attitude pushed me to my breaking point. The fact that Christopher could dismiss Rebecca's care so casually left me at a loss for words. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper, holding it out toward me. Here, take this. It's the divorce papers. This should settle everything. What? Settle everything? What are you even talking about? I'm saying, Emily can take care of Rebecca. You can just leave now. Goodbye. At that moment, I made a decision calmly and quietly, without any anger. Fine, then she can take over the 24-hour caregiving. Good luck. When I said that, Christopher's expression faltered for a split second. It was clear from his face that he had no real understanding of what caring for Rebecca entailed. He tried to laugh it off, brushing my words aside. Yeah, I get it. Once Emily starts, she'll see for herself. You've just been making this all about you. I wasn't surprised by his words anymore. Honestly, I didn't care about Christopher or Emily anymore. Rebecca wouldn't suffer under inadequate care. To ensure that, I began calmly and methodically explaining the caregiving process in detail. Rebecca needs help going to the bathroom multiple times at night. Someone has to be there every single time. During the day, she sleeps most of the time, but at meal times, she needs full assistance. She can't shower on her own, so you'll have to hold her steady while washing her body. I outlined every detail of the care required. Preparing meals takes time, and you have to make sure she doesn't choke because she has trouble swallowing. Showering means supporting her weight carefully, and drying her hair afterward is part of the job too. Rebecca can barely move on her own, so I've been performing bed care, including position changes, every single day. And most importantly, Rebecca's emotional care is crucial. She feels heartbroken about not being able to do anything for herself. Every day, I have to comfort and encourage her. Do you think Emily can handle that? Or you? You've never even tried once. When I confronted him, Christopher listened in silence. His initial dismissive attitude gradually shifted, but even then, he refused to admit his wrongdoing. If you're doing all those little things, of course you're exhausted. But come on, I have a job. If it's that hard, just hire a professional caregiver. His words were sharp, but I kept my composure. A professional? Then you'll arrange it, won't you? And cover all the costs. After all, you said Emily would take over, so it's your responsibility. For a moment, Christopher seemed at a loss for words. Perhaps he was beginning to realize this wasn't the simple matter he had imagined. Fine, I'll figure something out. Stop worrying so much. As he spoke, I made a silent decision. There was no longer any reason for me to stay with this man. Caring for Rebecca was undoubtedly challenging, but I couldn't envision a future with someone who trivialized that reality and betrayed me repeatedly. All right. Good luck, I said, signing the divorce papers without hesitation. My heart felt surprisingly calm. The caregiving would continue, but my resolve was firm. I wouldn't let him dictate my life any longer. As I finished signing, Christopher smirked down at me and said coldly, Now that we're strangers, you won't be getting a single penny of Rebecca's inheritance. Inheritance. His words instantly revealed his true motive for rushing the divorce. He wanted to claim Rebecca's inheritance entirely for himself. A quiet, icy anger rose within me. It wasn't about wanting the inheritance for myself. It was about his blatant greed and utter disregard for everything I'd endured. Unbelievable. It was all about the inheritance, wasn't it? I said quietly. Christopher's expression suggested he saw nothing wrong. Of course. It's only fair. I've been supporting this household. The inheritance is mine, and you're not entitled to a dime. His brazen selfishness left me sighing in frustration. It became clearer than ever that Christopher neither valued my efforts nor understood the weight of Rebecca's care. What shocked me even more was his naive optimism about life with Emily. Just so we're clear, I said, my tone calm but firm. Since we'll be strangers, I won't have anything to do with Rebecca's care. Emily will be living with you and taking over. Right? Christopher hesitated briefly, then responded with overconfidence. Of course. She's young, beautiful, and willing to do anything for me. She's nothing like you. That comment left me inwardly dumbfounded. He was completely detached from reality. Even caring for one's own parents can be incredibly challenging. Yet Emily, who has no blood relation to Rebecca, was expected to take on such a demanding role. I, on the other hand, had been able to continue caregiving without complaint because Rebecca had been so kind to me since the beginning of my marriage. Could Emily possibly manage that? He had no understanding of how difficult caregiving truly was or how rare it was to find someone with a sense of responsibility to carry it out. A few days later, Christopher was forced to confront the collapse of his optimistic delusions. Emily, the woman he had confidently relied on, showed absolutely no interest in caregiving. One day, when Christopher asked Emily to help take care of Rebecca, her response was chillingly cold. Emily, I was thinking we should move in together soon. Mom needs a little help, and it'd be great if you could pitch in while I'm at work, he suggested confidently. Emily frowned, letting out an exasperated sigh. Absolutely not. I'm not doing that. Caregiving? No way. If it's so important, you do it. Why should I quit my job for your mom? Her blunt refusal left Christopher stunned. The life he envisioned with Emily wasn't appealing to her at all. It was nothing but a burden. Of course, this outcome was obvious to anyone paying attention. No, it's not that hard. Just watch her while I'm at work. Please, I'm begging you. Christopher pleaded desperately, but Emily's response was even colder. Why don't you do it? I'm not doing that. Just thinking about living like that is unbearable. Emily dismissed him curtly and walked away. Christopher seemed to think it was only natural for a wife to take on caregiving duties. It never occurred to him that she might refuse. The moment Emily made her stance clear, Christopher felt his fantasy crumble for the first time. He began to realize there was no such thing as a new life. Emily had no intention of being involved in caregiving, and Christopher himself had no real understanding of how difficult it was to care for Rebecca. But being abandoned by Emily pushed Christopher into a corner. When Christopher told me about his exchange with Emily, I was at a loss for words. See, I told you. That was all I could manage to say. Christopher had always assumed Rebecca wouldn't live much longer. True, Rebecca was older now, and not as physically strong as she once was. However, she remained active, keeping up with walking and exercise regularly. While her physical mobility was limited, her mental faculties were completely intact. I knew Rebecca's strength and resilience, even at her advanced age. Yet Christopher, consumed by his assumptions, believed caregiving would soon end, and he rushed to claim the inheritance to start his new life. His plan shattered instantly when Emily left him. One day, Christopher called me. His voice was filled with panic and confusion. "Mia, please, I can't handle Mom's caregiving on my own. You have to help me. I'm really struggling here." Hearing those words, I couldn't help but laugh. As soon as he faced the reality of caregiving himself, he came running back to me for help. But seeing him like this left my heart completely cold. "You said you'd figure it out yourself. And aren't we strangers now? Why don't you ask Emily for help?" I replied calmly. And on the other end of the line, Christopher fell silent for a moment. "I told you, Emily left. And we never got married, so she's not my wife. Come on, don't be so cold. I have no one else to turn to. As my ex-wife, I'm begging you. Please help me." Christopher was desperate, but I felt nothing. Remembering how he had cornered, betrayed, and selfishly lived his life, I realized there was no room for sympathy. "Excuse me, I thought this is what you wanted. You said you'd manage, so why are you saying this now?" I said coldly, and hung up the phone. It was truly over. No matter how much he regretted it, there was no going back. I calmly considered my next move. With the divorce finalized, I had the right to demand alimony and compensation from Christopher and Emily in court. After all, I had taken on Rebecca's caregiving for years while Christopher belittled my efforts and betrayed me. It was only fitting that he face the consequences. I approached both of them with a calm determination, intent on claiming what was rightfully mine. However, Emily reportedly presented Christopher with an unexpected condition. "If you pay my settlement, I might consider getting back together with you." Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. Of course, she was only after his money, and Christopher, terrified of being alone, would undoubtedly agree to such terms. Sure enough, after pretending to think it over, Christopher reluctantly accepted Emily's proposal. "Fine, I'll pay. It's better than being alone." The moment he said those words, I was certain of his downfall. Christopher had no means to pay Emily's settlement, yet, unable to face the fear of being alone, he eventually resorted to consumer finance. A few days later, I saw him entering a consumer finance office from a distance. It was clear that he was getting himself into a situation far beyond his control. But this was the path he had chosen. I had no intention of getting involved anymore. Not long after, his life began to fall apart rapidly. First, his attempts to arrange caregiving services failed. With so many elderly people in need, all the nearby facilities were full. Rebecca had been participating in rehabilitation, which meant her caregiving level wasn't high. It was impossible for her to be admitted to a facility immediately. "Why is this taking so long? Isn't she supposed to be admitted right away?" He couldn't hide his frustration as he complained over the phone to the service coordinator. However, no matter how much he pushed, reality remained unchanged. The caregiving system doesn't move on impatience alone. The service coordinator carefully explained Rebecca's care level requirements, but he didn't understand any of it. "What does that even mean? Just hurry it up already." He reluctantly hung up the phone, his shoulders slumping as he let out a deep sigh. I heard all of this from Rebecca. Christopher had been venting his frustrations to her about his failed attempts to arrange care. Thinking about how she must have felt, hearing from her son that there was no place for her made a complicated wave of emotions rise within me. Christopher ate cold meals alone at home. With me gone, he had to handle all the housework and caregiving on his own. For a brief moment, imagining his situation made me feel pity for him, but that feeling disappeared as quickly as it came. How did it come to this? The words he muttered sounded hollow and empty. To make matters worse, his work life was spiraling downward as well. Lacking focus, he repeatedly made mistakes, causing his reputation at work to plummet. He was harshly reprimanded by his boss, and his coworkers began to treat him coldly. "How many times are you going to make the same mistake?" His boss scolded him again and again. Each time, he tried to bring up his caregiving duties as an excuse, but his boss responded coldly, "That's not my problem." Eventually, his boss told him that his tasks would be reassigned to others, leaving Christopher with no responsibilities. Isolated at work and overwhelmed at home, his stress only continued to grow. At first, his attempt to rebuild his relationship with Emily seemed to go well. However, she gradually began to distance herself. There was no way Emily would truly support a man drowning in debt to pay off divorce settlements and other expenses. "Emily, can't you stay with me a little longer?" His plea was tinged with loneliness and fear. But Emily responded coldly, "Even if you say that, I have my own life to live. Besides, you're not borrowing money for me, are you?" Her words left Christopher speechless. Emily didn't have any special feelings for him. She had only been using him from the start. With everything falling apart, Christopher found himself with no one to turn to, consumed by loneliness and despair. Why? Why did it have to come to this? Every time Christopher repeated those words, I calmly observed him in my mind. There was no going back. No matter how much he regretted it, I was no longer a part of his world. Later, when I heard that Emily had suddenly quit her job and disappeared without a trace, I wasn't surprised at all. It was clear from the beginning that someone like her, who had made such demands, was never serious about Christopher. She had been using him all along, something I had known from the start. Emily suddenly quit her job. I can't contact her, and I don't know why this happened. Watching Christopher vent his frustrations, I replied calmly, "I told you, didn't I? She was never serious about you." He couldn't say a word in response, and just fell silent. After that, his situation worsened even further. A major project at his workplace failed, and his boss's reprimands became relentless. "I get yelled at every single day. I think I've reached my limit," he said. "Is that so?" That was the only response I could give. I realized just how cold I could be toward someone I had already decided to abandon. That thought crossed my mind. Work failures, the collapse of his relationship with Emily, and Rebecca's caregiving were all weighing on him. It was clear that both his physical and mental strength were nearing their limits. Eventually, Christopher decided to quit his job. His debts continued to pile up, and he could no longer afford Rebecca's caregiving expenses. And yet, he still chose to resign. "I have no money left. I can't arrange a care facility for Rebecca. What should I do?" Even as I watched him suffer, I felt nothing. This was the result of the path he had chosen for himself. But when it came to Rebecca, my heart ached. I couldn't stand the thought of Christopher's irresponsibility affecting the kind and gentle Rebecca. "I'll take Rebecca in," I declared. Christopher looked shocked. "Are you serious? You'll take her in? I thought you said you didn't care anymore." "I don't care about you, but Rebecca is important to me." At my words, Christopher fell silent. It seemed he didn't even have the strength to argue anymore. From that moment on, I began preparing to bring Rebecca into my home. I couldn't just leave her with Christopher, who had no means to care for her and no facility to send her to. Rebecca was still strong in spirit. I hoped that by welcoming her into my home, she could feel a sense of safety and peace. When I told Rebecca that I would be taking her in, she cried tears of gratitude. Mia, thank you so much. I'm so sorry for being such a burden. It's nothing like that. From now on, let's spend peaceful days together. And so I began living with Rebecca once again. I no longer cared about Christopher, but I was determined to protect her. That was my final decision. In the days that followed, my life with Rebecca became as calm and comforting as if we were mother and daughter. With consistent rehabilitation, Rebecca eventually regained her ability to walk steadily on her own. In the beginning, I helped her practice walking, but now it feels like she is the one supporting me. On the days I have work, a professional care staff member comes to assist, allowing me to leave the house without worry. Rebecca, too, has grown more accepting of receiving professional help and no longer pushes herself unnecessarily. One evening, after finishing dinner preparations and relaxing in the living room with Rebecca, the topic of Christopher unexpectedly came up. Although I hadn't kept in touch with him much, I found myself feeling a bit curious. Have you been in contact with Christopher? I asked. Rebecca looked slightly surprised before shaking her head lightly. No, I haven't. I don't need such a selfish, money-driven son anymore. Her words carried the weight of the pain and disappointment she had been harboring. But what she said next warmed my heart deeply. Because I have you, I'm fine. I think of you as my real daughter. Those words made my chest tighten with emotion. Holding back tears, I smiled and gently held Rebecca's hand. Thank you. I feel the same way. You give me the strength to keep going. She smiled softly, as if relieved. We then shifted back to our usual light-hearted conversations, enjoying the moment. When Rebecca talked about her rehabilitation progress, her delighted expression always made me treasure our time together even more. How far did you walk today? I asked. I went to the park and back this morning. Before, just getting there was all I could manage, but now I really enjoy my walks. That's amazing. It sounds like you'll be able to go even farther next time. Yes, maybe I'll try going a little farther next time. Day by day, life with Rebecca became more vibrant. Our days were filled with gentle conversations and endless smiles as we healed from past wounds and moved forward toward a brighter future together. The time when I struggled with Christopher's betrayals now feels like a distant memory, almost as if it never happened. Now I find myself truly smiling every day. I never imagined how wonderful it could be to move forward and live a happy life. The time I spend with Rebecca is undoubtedly a part of that happiness.